In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
So we are talking with Gunnar Nelson. We're talking some old school, going back to Get Forward. We're talking about the formation of his band, what became Nelson. And my first question is, there's lots of brother bands out there. You know, you look at Van Halen, Oasis, the Bee Gees. What's the catch of coming from a twin brother band?
Well, technically, I mean, Matthew and I are identical twins. So we literally split from the same cells. So genetically speaking, our vocal cords are the same, at least physiologically and stuff. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything quite as cool as vocals being sung by siblings. I mean, there's a blend there that, I mean, historically has been going on forever. And you can tell it's kind of cool and kind of magic. But with the two of us, it's like, when my dad was doing his early rockabilly stuff, he was always either double tracking himself in the studio or he was singing his own harmony to himself. We actually got to do that live, you know, and not have to overdub it. So it worked out great. But Matt and I have always been singing together. It started out differently though, Ryan, because when we first started out, as I mentioned, we were super young. So we started got our first instruments at 5 or 6. And we had our first recording session at 11, started playing the LA club scene professionally from the time we were 12. So the irony being, people kind of associate us with that whole Sunset Strip scene that was going on with the metal scene in the 80s. But Matthew and I started
way
so
before
young.
that.
Like 10 years before, the LA club scene was incredibly vibrant. There was so much activity there, and it was during that time of all the skinny tie bands. So there you had the new wavers and you had the punks. It's kind of like the Sharks and the Jets, you know. You had those two worlds, but
bands
the club
like
scene was
the
ripping.
Knack. Could I say band like the Knack, new wave type bands? How were you guys able to play the clubs being so young? Did you get slid in the back door, or could only come when you're on stage and then you had to get ushered right off, or did you just say, hey, you know, my dad?
Well, it's a great question. If we had just been playing infrequently, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But we were playing so much at that time that it did become a problem. So there was a wonderful person named Michelle Meyer, and she was the booker at Madame Wong's West. And Madame Wong's West was just a legendary club there in Santa Monica.
I ran sound at Madame Wong's West downstairs.
Oh, okay.
And everybody, I think I made
a
a lot of people angry at me running sound downstairs at Madame Wong's West. But I know that club.
So you know, Esther, the Dragon Lady Wong, liked me and Matthew.
Yes.
We occasionally got to play for her husband, George, in Chinatown because they kind of separated those two. And Michelle at the time was the booker of Wong's West. And she believed in me and Matthew. She thought we were cool because we didn't play like a couple of 12-year-olds. I mean, we really took it very, very seriously. So we were playing at the same level as those other contemporary bands that we were sharing the stage with. You mentioned the Knack, and they were great. I love them. The Knack, the Go-Go's, the Plimsolls.
The Plimsolls, Animotion, maybe. Animotion was around that. I used to go see a lot of bands that would play Jack, the Rembrandts, whatever band was before the Rembrandts that he was in. You know, just who wrote "Am I on the phone booth? This one across the wall." Jack. Oh man! All right, someone in the chat's gonna help me out with that. But yeah, but a lot of new wave bands, and you were side by side with them.
Well, we were actually sharing the stage with all of those bands, and I try to explain to people. Look, people think that the metal scene was tough on the Sunset Strip. Those guys were wimps. You know, if you actually really wanted to learn your chops or pay your dues, you know, you were the Nelson boys at 12, 13 years of age playing those stages with a bunch of incredibly heroin addicted people playing Jangle Pop. And boy, man, they would knife you if you went 5 minutes over your set time. They'd sabotage your equipment. You know, they talk crap about you on stage when they were doing their set, because no one wants to be schooled by a couple of 12-year-olds. It's embarrassing, you know? So, you know, we got a lot of crap, and that's great. And it prepared us for what was to come. It's never really been an easy road, but it was Michelle Meyer, the booker at Wong's West, that got together with us. We went down to City Hall and we petitioned City Hall to actually pass an ordinance that allowed underage performers to go in, perform, as long as they were escorted by a guardian, and then go right back out. That's our law that we did.
Holy crap, that's Nelson's rule.
Yeah. So, and that was
Nelson alert. Yeah. Nelson's law.
Yep. And it was cool because, getting to play those clubs as you've done so much, you know what I'm talking about. There's nothing like it. Every gig that you do now, when you're out there on a big stage and you got your deli trays and your personal assistants and a real dressing room, what a luxury. Because back then, man, if you had a corner of a broom closet, you were lucky.
And there was a lot of broom closets in Madame Wong's West. You know that place was an old mortuary.
Yes, because I was talking to Esther one day, and there was a big, beautiful elevator that went from the downstairs, the load in, to all the floors, right? And you did sound downstairs. We mostly played downstairs when we were starting, of course, because you have to pay your dues. You play downstairs. Then when you start pulling people, they put you upstairs. That was like a big promotion. But what I didn't know, I was in the elevator loading in with Esther and having a conversation, which was difficult anyways. But she mentioned, we mentioned how wonderful the elevator was. It was huge. She goes, "Oh yeah, this is how they move the bodies." I said, "Move the bodies? What are you talking about?" "Oh, just a mortuary." And it's like, you really? Yeah. And so the downstairs was the embalming room. Where you did sound was the embalming room. And upstairs,
I did a lot of embalming down in that downstairs room as well. I mean, and even in the elevator, I mean, you have to understand, you were 12, I was 20. I did a lot of wrong things in that entire establishment. In fact, it was one of my first jobs in Los Angeles, moving down there, was doing sound. And I wouldn't really call it being a sound technician at Madame Wong's. I would never put that on my resume. But I also was one of my first gigs with an artist, with the first band I ever played in, called Jeff Scott. And that's where I was poached at Madame Wong's West by Candy, who was a power pop band.
Candy was a big deal there. Candy was like a big draw. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I ended up joining Candy because of that, because of playing with Jeff Scott, poached at Madame Wong's West. And then, of course, Candy for me led into so many things, playing with Gilby for years, and then eventually, Electric Angels. And then Electric Angels turned into my opportunity with Alice Cooper. And it's just and it's funny how it all revolves around this club, Madame Wong's, because the booker that became after Michelle was Jonathan Daniel, who was the bass player in Candy, bass player in Electric Angels, and now is mogul manager of like Green Day, Train, Panic, Fall Out Boy, Weezer. He's a mogul. So there you go.
So much rock and roll love came out of that one club. So many people went through that club, played that club, worked there, and it was a different time, as you know. I mean, there was a real club scene in Los Angeles that was competitive and vibrant. And I think it all changed when they went to that whole pay-to-play thing, which would have been mid-'80s, kind of 86.
But at that point, you guys were out of it, and you guys were out of there, and you guys had already established Nelson. I want to stick with the, you're getting pushback from some of these other bands. They don't want to be schooled by a young set of brothers. What's it like between the two of you, though, being that you're twins? Are there arguments, or because you're twins, do you just all of a sudden hands go the same way, vocal, resonance is the same, or is there just as much tension?
Wow. Both, to be honest with you. Family, it's tough working with family, as you know. For anybody who's out there who does any kind of work, any kind of business of any kind with family, it can get a little testy. But it just means that you're passionate about it. I mean, the one thing Matthew and I always shared was, we really, really, really take the music seriously. We want to honor music because we're students of it. We love it genuinely because, as you know, you can basically make a better living doing pretty much anything else. It's really tough doing this, you got to really love what you do. And Matt and I, for every similarity that we have as twins, we also have some profound differences. Matt is the kind of guy, he's like the family Kissinger. He will think things through before he expresses himself. And he's kind of the peacemaker. I have zero filter, man. So, I'm one of these guys that just comes right out and says it. And, the good part is you never have to guess where I'm coming from. The bad thing is there's some people who've been offended through the years, and, that kind of sucks, but I never intended that. But I know how to get things done. So between me and Matthew, it's really complementary. It's kind of one of those things where we realized in the beginning of doing this, when we started out, just kind of by default, because I was back on the drums, I was the backup singer. I was the singing backup singer, and Matt was the lead singer on the bass. And we experienced a shift right after our father died, and we were working towards getting signed to Geffen Records. We were working with a co-writer friend of ours, a guy named Mark Tanner. And we went into the studio one day, and I love this story. Matthew denies it, and I lived it. This is how it happens. But there's a reason why I became the lead singer in Nelson. And I have to give thanks to Captain James T. Kirk, because the Star Trek marathon was on that day in the studio, and we were in the studio making a demo, which wound up being one of the first songs that got us signed to Geffen. And gosh, we were young. Like, it was a year after my dad died, so we were like 19. And Matt had always taken for granted that he was going to be the guy singing lead. And we were in the studio. We had done everything we possibly could have done. There's like a lounge, and then you go through 2 doors, and then there was a studio room. And Mark and I were making the record, and I loved studio stuff. So that was always something that attracted me. And we spent all the time in there, and we were done with everything, Ryan. Everything was recorded except for the lead vocal. And I went in and said, hey, Matt, it's, you're on, it's your turn. And it happened to be the Tribble episode during the Star Trek marathon. And it was right at the good part. And
the Tribble episode.
And he didn't want to break from the Tribble episode. It's like, the Star Trek marathon is on. It's going to be over in 20 minutes. I'll be in when it's done. And, ooh, nice.
Thank you very much, William Shatner. Thank you, Vic Chalfant.
Yes. James T. And so I went back into the studio, and I told Mark what Matt had said. And he said, hey, just throw something down, just as a placeholder. And I sang the lead vocal very quickly. And he said, hey, sing the next one. So I sang the next one. And he said, okay, sing the last one. I sang the last one. And then Matthew walked in after the Star Trek marathon was over, and all the lead vocals were sung. And he was pissed. It's like, what's this all about? And what we did was we realized that was kind of the beginning of Nelson's sound. My voice is far more chesty and throaty and better suited for holding down the main vocal. And Matthew can sing higher than I can. So that was when Mark said, hey, just try a harmony on this stuff, Matt. We can always replace the vocal with yours later. Matt sang the first harmony vocal, and it was really apparent that was the Nelson sound. That was the moment that it clicked.
So between the two of you, your producer, and William Shatner, that's where the sort of magic and mojo happened.
James Tiberius Kirk and the Tribbles. That's what did it.
Wow, that's a great story.
I'm Ryan Roxie, and I've taken all my years of experience of playing guitar, and I want to pass the torch of rock and roll on to you. Check out the System 12 guitar method.